We want it to be very crazy and memorable because people don't ever do this in enterprise. And I jump over the roof of the stall and I'm like, wait, stop, don't flush. And he's like, I don't have an option to use a small flush. And I'm like, well, with Greybeam, we give you the option to use a small flush.
Kyle is one of the co-founders of Greybeam, a tool that helps you reduce your Snowflake bill. I met Kyle at the On Deck program, and him and his co-founder Arsham are just two of the funnest people that I've ever met. And they've just been doing this really wacky marketing. So I wanted to get him on and hear his side of events and what they've been up to. Enjoy. To give background, so we know each other because we did the On Deck program, and you guys, I were like some of the funniest, most fun, cool people that I met. And it's been really cool to see you guys just, doing well, but also just having a lot of fun. And I see this just like, you're posting your message is coming through, but you're also posting it in like ways that are like quite ridiculous, I would say. I've seen you like, it looks like a pile of coats in the corner, and I just see Kyle emerge and start talking about the benefits of Greybeam and stuff like that. So it's been brilliant to watch, and I wanted to kind of invite you on and hear a bit about the journey. How long has it been since you founded Greybeam now?
Yeah, Jack, thanks for having me here. And I would say the current iteration of the product has been since February this year. So it's been about 9 months, maybe less.
Okay.
Yeah. Arsham and I have been working together since 2023, maybe May of that year. So it's been a little bit closer to 2.5 years. We pivoted a number of times, I would say like 6 or 7 times to get here. And when we first met last year, we were still solving the same issue of Snowflake costs, but we did it very differently. Ended up pivoting in February, and then we've been building that solution since.
Yeah, and maybe just before we even get into like where you're at, I think it seemed like you guys were best friends before, had known each other a long time, right? It's fair to say.
Yeah, let's go with that. We've known each other since high school. Separate friend groups then. We went to university together. We had some mutual friends for the first year, maybe first term actually in university. We were hanging out quite often, like going to a bunch of parties, just doing your typical first year stuff. And then I think Arsham dropped out in the second or third year, and then we reconnected several years later through mutual acquaintances as well. And then we started hanging out much more often then.
Okay. Yeah, but it's a very good relationship. It seems from everything I see. It's fun to watch you guys hang out.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and this was like, you kind of mentioned pivots, but it seems like, to me, I actually didn't realize it was a pivot, because it feels like very much on the same thread, that you guys have been pulling the same thread for a long time. What is the problem you're solving, and how did you kind of come to the conclusion that it should be solved?
Yeah. The problem that we're solving today is just the burden of managing Snowflake costs. So for our customers now, the immediate value proposition is that we're able to reduce their Snowflake costs by very high rates, in the orders of magnitude of 70 to as high as 95%. And, we stumbled across this through just talking to a bunch of users. I used to lead data teams at several different startups, and many of the different pivots that we had were a result of my hypothesis in the pains of managing a data team. This being one of them. So before we actually landed on trying to solve Snowflake costs, the first the first problem we tried to target was AI data analysts. When I was leading a data team, I had a lot of the same questions come up over and over again. Even though we deployed self-service business intelligence tools like Looker, people would always come through the ticketing funnel. And I always just thought, if we had an AI data analyst able to resolve some of these simple questions, it wouldn't have to burden our team to answer them. So the first solution was to build that when GPT 3.5 first came out. Ended up taking it to market, didn't really work out. And then the next problem that I faced was managing my data catalog. And that was a huge pain. And this was because, a data catalog is only as good as the content within it. And before LLMs were a thing, we actually had to manually go in and complete all the different catalog documentation to find the assets, to find the column tables, etc.
What is
Sorry.
a data catalog, just for those
Yeah.
noobs like me that are not familiar?
Yeah. You can think of a data catalog as a repository of descriptions of the different assets that your database has. So, for example, maybe like you have a database that contains all of your podcast information. So you would have a definition. No, this is the database that contains all of the podcast information. You might have different schemas in there. Maybe there's a table or a schema of guests, and then you have a definition in there. And then within that schema, you have different tables. I'm not sure what it would be
Yeah.
populated. So your data catalog would contain information describing all these assets and potentially how they all relate to each other.
And this is, I guess, something that, because you don't hear this talked about much in like people just using like Postgres and stuff, but it becomes a much bigger deal for data analysts and data
Yeah,
teams.
yeah, exactly. So typically teams that have even a small number of analysts, and then if you compound that with the number of business users, maybe like 50 to 60 or plus, all of them might have very similar questions like, hey, does this type of data live in our database? Do we have a list of podcast guests in our database? So they would be able to go into the catalog and identify, oh, we do have this, and this is in this table, and these tables are queried in this dashboard. So a data catalog can contain information like that.
Okay, super cool. And sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh yeah, yeah. So one of the pain points of using a data catalog is keeping it up to date. So when I was leading a data team, we were a small, call it like 5-person team, and outside of just maintaining the infrastructure itself, you had to obviously support our end users, and then now you have all these questions coming in, and sometimes it's like, yeah, does this data live inside our BI tool? And oftentimes that can be found in the data catalog, but then we also had to update the data catalog to keep it, uh, you know, being able to keep up with these questions that come in. So that was quite annoying. And this was maybe 2 summers ago. Arsham and I, or actually it was last summer, Arsham and I went to the market trying to understand whether or not this was a huge pain point for some of our other users. So our hypothesis was, what if we could create a data catalog that just scrapes information from PRs, from tickets that people submit, from Notion docs, to be able to have a self-populating data catalog? Ended up
mm,
turning out that people didn't care. People really either didn't have the budget to bring on a data catalog because there's intrinsic value, right? It doesn't really reduce costs or increase revenue. And then the second piece was just people were cost saving overall. So many of our interviewees were responding with the same answers. So we decided, hey, actually, maybe we should tackle costs. And then lo and behold, Snowflake cost was always the first, if not the second highest line item in almost everyone that we talked to.
wow. How much do people spend on Snowflake? I mean, I know that's like a very, very broad question, but
Yeah, it can really vary depending on the profile, but typically when we're talking to folks, on average, people are spending between 50 to 100K. I would say if you are a fairly mature company, the average you're probably spending is like 300K plus or minus like 200. And then into the late startup, early enterprise, you can be a million to as high as like 25 million I've seen.
Scaling DevTools is sponsored by WorkOS. At some point, you'll land a customer who needs enterprise features like audit trails, SSO, role-based access control. You could spend ages tearing your hair out building these things yourself, or you could use WorkOS. Let's hear from Upal from Digger.dev.
I can speak for open source companies because I think that's where I have the most experience personally. If you're open source and you're doing enterprise first, the minute you think about monetization is when you should think about WorkOS. How it's designed is that you can start as early as day zero. But for us, it wasn't day zero. It was closer to when we first started monetizing because we didn't have a sign up at all. People could just anonymously use our tool. To be honest, if we do that again, I think we'd think about that on day zero, to be honest, because we should have done it on day zero, ideally. Anonymous usage should be permitted, but you should know who's using your tool. It should be opt-in, 100%. But it'd be great to have auth from day zero. So yeah, that's what I think.
Thanks, WorkOS. Back to the episode. what are they storing in Snowflake typically? It's like usage data or like...
The first things that people would store is going to be the application data. So, if you're hosting Facebook, for example, you're going to be loading up all the different like user analytics and pages and logins, etc. And then as companies evolve, they'll start bringing other data sources. So typically this would be either customer support data or their CRM data, so Salesforce, maybe some event-based data like clicks coming from like a heap or post hoc, some of these other things. And then of course, as a company continues to grow and grow, you're just bringing in more and more different data sources in.
Okay, super cool. And okay, so people were talking about cost, and then what was the first kind of step that you guys made?
So we were taking a look in the market. Previously, where I used to work at Ratbook and Clearco, or not Ratbook, sorry, at Clearco, they deployed a cost optimization tool called select.dev. So we were looking at companies like that and adjacent to them, and we just noticed that almost every single tool optimized Snowflake in the exact same way. And without going into too much detail, Snowflake works by turning on what's called a warehouse, and warehouse uses compute to process your queries. And what they did was just turn it off when it's not being used. Very simple. And every different optimization tool did that in some adjacent flavor. And what we realized was that there was no one trying to actually optimize the other half of the equation, which is actually all of the queries being sent to Snowflake. So with LLMs being very hot at the time, we thought that, hey, what if we could have some framework that the LLM could use to actually optimize a SQL query? Because if a query runs faster, that means you're using the Snowflake warehouse for less, which in turn translates to cost savings. So we went that route, which is when we first met in On Deck last year. And we tried that for about a month or two. We had 3 design partners. And we just quickly came to realize that doing pure SQL optimization was not going to save as much as we had wanted unless we had the perfect customer. Maybe they were using some BI tool that wrote SQL queries in this canned way that was very inefficient. And then you pair that with a team that perhaps didn't have a data engineering background by trade, and they wrote just fairly inefficient SQL queries. Then you have a perfect storm where, okay, SQL optimization can work, but obviously that's very few and far between. So we ended up going back to the drawing board in December, and we noticed in the industry there was a huge trend of a technology called Iceberg, and also of a second technology called DuckDB. And what we realized was that if people are moving on to Iceberg, and what Iceberg means for some of the folks who don't understand is Iceberg is an open table format, and you can think of that as a universal data format. And more data warehouses started adopting support for Iceberg. And what that means for companies is that if I store my data in this Iceberg format, I can actually access it using other forms of compute. So for example, if now I'm storing my data in Snowflake, instead I move it over to Iceberg, this means I'm keeping the data in my own personal blob storage, whether it's S3 or Google Cloud Storage or Azure. And Snowflake can now actually query my data where it sits instead of having first moving that data into Snowflake. So if I store it in Iceberg, I can now access it using BigQuery or Databricks or any of the other plethora of open source compute engines. So with this movement, Arsha and I thought, hey, what if we actually help customers, maybe secretly move them onto Iceberg, and then we can access their data using other forms of compute that could be much, much cheaper than Snowflake. So then this comes to the other piece of the equation, which is DuckDB, which has been taking the data world by storm last year. And DuckDB is an incredibly lightweight query engine that gives you the performance of Snowflake, except it can run on your laptop. So, you can be querying gigabytes of data within seconds using this very, very lightweight query engine. So we combined the two, and we decided to see whether or not that would work. And in our test cases, in most cases, it is as performant as Snowflake. So we thought, hey, if we bring this to the enterprise and we help them move their data into this universal format, can we just intercept these queries and process them using DuckDB instead of Snowflake? It turns out you can, which is why we're able to deliver these very, very aggressive savings between 71 to 95%.
Wow. And so does most of it comes from DuckDB, or most of it comes from using Iceberg, or is it you have to use them together?
So for us, Iceberg is kind of like an implementation detail. We actually haven't even implemented Iceberg for a few of our customers yet. And really what we're doing is unloading our customers' data from Snowflake into the customer's S3 bucket as Parquet files. And then we just
Mm,
interact with those files using DuckDB. Where Iceberg really needs to come in is if we actually need to bring in a third query engine, because now we actually need this universal access layer, so to speak.
interesting. Okay, so they're saving money because they don't need the Snowflake data warehouse. They don't
That's
need
right.
to put the data into Snowflake data warehouse before they query it. It's like sitting in S3 and then use DuckDB to query it.
Yeah, you can mostly think of it like that. Um,
Okay.
the reason is because the way that Snowflake bills, obviously they have a 10 to 20x premium on the compute that they're charging. And turns out that most of the queries that we're able to support, and today it is just read-only workloads. So you can think like business intelligence or ad hoc analytical queries. Most of these actually don't need to use Snowflake. And obviously, if you're not querying with Snowflake, you don't have to pay Snowflake. So if we're able to even route 100% of these queries to execute on DuckDB, then theoretically the upper limit for us is 100% savings. Um, Whereas, if you're using some of our competitors' tools, they're just fine tuning and optimizing within Snowflake. So you really can't
Mm,
optimize past that base floor that you're paying Snowflake. So for us, what's really important is how many queries we can actually execute on DuckDB, and we're trying to optimize for as many as possible.
okay. Interesting. And so do they need to know how it works, or can they just come in and use Greybeam exactly like they were using Snowflake, and then they just it's cheaper and they don't need to know?
Yeah, we try our best to make the onboarding as frictionless as possible. So we're actually publishing our first customer success story, and effectively, the only thing you have to do is just change the connection string. All you have to do is go into your settings. If you're using Looker or Tableau, Metabase, or any of these other tools, just change that from Snowflake to Greybeam, and then you're done. You don't have to understand how to write DuckDB flavored syntax. You don't have to even know what's happening behind the scenes. But suddenly your queries are just as fast, if not faster, and you're saving 90%.
Wow, that's really cool. And that does bring me to your H1 messaging. I think it's really good. I was talking to you about this before. But if people go to the greybeam.ai website, the H1 is just route your Snowflake BI queries to DuckDB and save 86%. And then the subtext is Greybeam provides fully managed DuckDB clusters, easily plug in your existing Snowflake workloads, no migration required. I think it's like a really like one of the simplest messages that I've seen. Um, yeah, was it always simple, or did you?
It was always simple. I think like how we approach that is just if I'm someone who has this problem, the moment I land on the page, you have to just read it and be like, oh, this solves my problem. So we went through a number of different iterations, and we had to keep the hero messaging as simple as and concise as possible. Previously, it was like route your Snowflake queries to DuckDB and save 70%. Although it wasn't specific enough, it was too broad. So we started getting people coming in and booking demos who didn't really have the pain of Snowflake costs on the BI side. Today, we only support these read-only workloads, as I've mentioned before, and we're building up to support transformations, and that means like being able to write data back into the warehouse. Um, and we don't support that just yet. So I wanted to make the updated messaging as specific as possible to the problems that we do solve, which are these BI queries. So, for customers who have products built as embedded analytics, or maybe they use BI as some kind of operational workflow, I wanted to just click, which is why the thing is how you see it now. And we did update it from
Yeah.
70% to 86 because this is now our new average.
Okay. Nice. That's great. It's a big number.
Yeah.
Um, and so, who are the ideal customers then? It's like BI analysts, or it's
Yeah, the ideal customers that we have are, of course, we're still trying to figure out, but the typically where we're seeing success is one of two profiles. The first would be, if your company actually serves data as some kind of product. So to give you an example, one of our earlier customers is a cannabis analytics platform. So they aggregate
What?
data from a cannabis analytics platform.
Okay.
So they aggregate data from point of sale systems and cannabis producers and all that, dump it into Snowflake. They shape it and model it, and then they serve that as dashboards to all the brick and mortar stores across the U.S. and Canada. So you can imagine they have so many users just interacting with their Snowflake data through these dashboards. So that's a very good kind of IC for us because Snowflake at that point becomes a cost of goods sold for them. The other flavor that we have is if you're using data as some kind of operational tool. So where I usually work at Rapbook, for example, the ops team would be using our dashboards as like their ticketing mechanism to understand, when new tickets come in, when to solve it, and then they would go in to do more digging through these dashboards. So those are the other half that also serve as a goods customer, and you usually only see those in larger startups or maybe early enterprise.
Mm, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess it's just that it's like a key part of the business
Yeah, that's right.
rather than, yeah.
Yeah.
And do you typically reach out to, is there like someone responsible that's like if you see this job role, or is it's just more about the company at this point?
It's a little bit of both. I would say for the former, where it's, uh, they're serving data as a product. Usually the CTO is pretty good, or some kind of like senior leadership in engineering. And then for the latter, where they're actually using data internally instead of serving it to customers, it would be, VP of data, director of data engineering, some kind of like data-esque leadership role.
Okay, super cool. All right, I just wanted to establish that since now I want to get on to like hearing about all the fun stuff you've been doing. So in my LinkedIn feed, and people should just go see Kyle's LinkedIn. Like, you want to tell us, like, I've seen this like microphone you've got. Like, you want to tell us about all the videos you've been making?
So a lot of the marketing or even content that we publish on LinkedIn, we try to keep it very fun. And I think first ever piece of content that we did that was really fun, it actually might have been the ice bath one that we were talking about earlier.
Oh yeah.
But the earliest one to my memory is our hiring video. And we just did some very silly, random, out of the blue hiring video. I'm working and I'm just this erratic person doing, erratic movements. And I'm working. And then the camera's looking at me this way. And I'm like, hello, I'm Kyle. And I'm very robotic. And, the video is cut so poorly on purpose. And there's another one where I'm just like turned away and the camera's looking this way. I'm like, we're hiring for XYZ roles, et cetera, et cetera. And, we've kept that kind of nonsensical content throughout. And I think it really helps because, you go on LinkedIn every day, some folks, and you just see the same boring thing over and over again, right? It's like someone talking about, oh, what I learned about BDB from getting married, or just like someone's face. And like, if we're a small startup, you need someone to stop and watch and read your content. And, they only
Yeah.
do that if you have some kind of pattern interruption. And I think for us, keeping it lighthearted and nonsensical, it brings like entertainment to a platform that's just so bland and boring. And hopefully we keep it up. We have had some other ones. I'm not sure if you saw the whole toilet gag, but
Oh wait, remind me. Maybe I did. Well,
so our very first, like, call an ad about what we do to the world was this video of Arsham, about to use the bathroom, and he goes to number one. He's about to flush the toilet, and I jump over the roof of the stall, and I'm like, "Wait, stop! Don't flush." And he's like, "Well, like, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Hey, you only did a number one, so there's no need to use a big flush." And he's like, I don't have an option to use a small flush." And I'm like, "Well, with Greybeam, we give you the option to use a small flush." In parallel, we're talking about as a company where, you should use DuckDB for all of your small queries and, keep Snowflake for the big queries. So we had that gag going for about a couple of weeks, and for folks who aren't really familiar with Snowflake, DuckDB, or the databases, it really helped them quickly understand, like, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, you're right. No, I don't need to use the heavy flush all the time if I'm just, doing a number one.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And then I saw you did a lot of the conference videos. You were doing like these. So here's actually, maybe this is interesting. This is why I remember from like seeing it was just like you just running around like with, I think you had like a duck. Was it a duck microphone? I think that's how I remember it.
Get a banana
Yeah.
with a cup.
And you're just running around and you just stick the microphone in people's face and you're like, I can't remember what you asked, but it's like, what do you mean about like like what were the questions you're asking? It's like,
Yeah. So there was a few conferences, but I think the one that you recall more closely was whether or not people use trailing or leading commas.
oh yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Surprisingly, a lot of leading commas, which I love.
Yeah, I saw that seemed a lot of people there. It seemed quite a contentious point. I guess it's like the kind of classic like semicolons and stuff, like all these kind of tabs. Yeah. Tab
So
spaces.
we did have a lot of different microphones in there, and using the different props just a way to hide the mic, but also brings that kind of insane comedic relief. And I don't know if you caught all the different mics that we had, but we had a duck, we had a mini ping pong paddle, we had a chair, which I really wanted to get more in, but that was only in for like a 1-second clip. We had like a massive capybara stuffed animal. I want to bring more crazy mics into the mix.
And are these actual mics, or are they just like are they sold as mics, or are you're just like taking a stuffed animal and just inserting a microphone inside?
Yeah, we have a stuffed animal, and then I hold the microphone behind like the ear, or in a way that you can't see them.
That's the trick. Okay. Okay. But I do think that it does just seem like you are basically just being yourselves on the camera. It doesn't seem like, I mean, obviously you're being a bit ridiculous, but it's not that much of a stretch to how you guys are in person.
Yeah. We do have to hold back a little bit, but we just want to make sure everyone has a good time. Like building a company is a very long, arduous, and painful journey, and if there's some ways that we could have fun with it, we definitely try to. And I think it is paying off. I get a lot of people who recognize us for, I love your content, it's really refreshing. Yeah, people talking about our toilet gag a lot, and in good and bad ways. So like I'll meet some other folks and like, oh, why'd you go with that toilet stuff? It's not good, but they saw it and they remembered us, right? So I'm not sure. For a while, we were deciding to just drop the whole toilet theme, but now that I think back to it, I kind of want to keep it going because it's so memorable. It like the messaging that clicks, and everyone always remembers us for it, for better or for worse. I just can't think of another way that's as creative as the whole toilet flushing analogy. So, I mean, yeah. TBD.
What's your process for making these?
It's usually just on the spot. We're there, and I'm like, okay, what kind of crazy thing can we do to have this video? So there's one where we were at a conference doing another set of interviews, and I forgot to film an introduction for it. So we were in our office, and I was like, okay, what can I do that's just ridiculous? And that one, I rolled out from under the desk, just like I rolled out, and I was like, what's up, everybody? This is Kyle from Greybeam, and we are... It's just what's the most ridiculous thing I can do at this moment?
It's great, though. There's this guy, Gonto, who was like he was like the VP of marketing at Auth0, and he's got this phrase that I love. There's like, it's better to be different than be better in marketing. And I feel like you guys are like the perfect illustration of that, because this stuff you're doing is not expensive. Presumably you're just literally pulling out your phone and filming something, get a mic maybe, but like
Yeah.
basically zero cost. And it's just like you're creative. It's different.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And and this is the kind of mindset we want to do with all of the content that we push. And we're trying to be very intentional with our brand without spending a lot of money. Going through branding exercises can be like tens of thousands of dollars. And to give that example, the first thing that we were super intentional with was with our swag. Like you go to conferences or you get company swag, and it's always just like, okay, this is a T-shirt. So when we were making our swag, we wanted to make it not just a T-shirt. Like it should just be a shirt that people would wear on a regular day. So we put a lot of thought into it, and this goes with everything. With all the marketing, we just did our first customer success story, as I was mentioning earlier, and we don't want it to be a vanilla. Oh, we saved 90%. This is the problem he solved. This is what it was like. We wanted it to be both a memorable case study. So to do that, we had to like first film it. And the ideas that we had was, okay, let's fly to Seattle, let's go get hot wings, and that's progressively spicier and spicier, and then ask our customer our interview questions. So he would be like, oh yeah, I saved and it was, so like we wanted to be very crazy and memorable because people don't ever do this in enterprise.
Yeah.
We ended up not doing that because he doesn't like eating wings. So
Oh, no.
yeah, our
Next
customer is a pilot as a hobby, so he actually has his own private plane. So we're like, okay, well, why don't we just fly the plane and do the interview on the plane? So we did that instead.
No.
Yeah, and then to actually publish the blog itself, again, like I don't want to do a vanilla case study. It should add value to people's lives as opposed to just like having a badge on our website. Oh, we serve this customer. So for the case study itself, it's a playbook. This is the exact situation this customer is in. They are using embedded analytics. They use these tools, and this is where the breakdown of their costs are. These are all the different things he did to reduce his costs. And also, this is how he's using Greybeam. So it's like something that's actually actionable as opposed to just something very, very vanilla and boring. So yeah, we try to be very intentional with everything. And this is, one of those few examples.
Okay, so I'm curious on this. I think you're going to have opinion. So why is doing like silly things like okay in like enterprise? Because I don't know why people, I guess some people probably feel like, oh, I need to be really serious. I need to, what's your
Yeah.
take on this?
Yeah. We just haven't gone there yet, right? There might be some wall where being too silly is not going to help us close deals. But I think at the end of the day, everyone that we're talking to, they're just another person, right? They put on, what's the phrase, like one sock at a time in the morning. And if like this level of silliness means we can't win this customer, that's obviously going to be very bad. So when we hit that wall, we're definitely going to have to face it then. But I think in this very, very early stage of the business, we need a way to stand out and to get people to remember us and to hear us and to see us and to get our content liked. So there's more engagement. So it hits the LinkedIn algorithm, and being silly helps us get there. But the question becomes like, how silly can we be? There's probably some wall in the future, and I think we'll have to tone it down at some point.
Well, I think Superbase and Posthog are now both like multi-billion. Well, Superbase like 5 billion valuation. I think Posthog's like at least 1 billion, and they're both. I think they're both still very silly in all their marketing.
Yeah.
So you probably got still like some headroom on silliness.
How deep can I go, right?
Yeah.
Posthog was a really good example. Like they changed their landing page to just the most outrageous thing. I absolutely love it. Although I think the one challenging thing with their new landing page is it's just so hard to navigate. I love how different it is. It's just super memorable.
Yeah. Agreed. James is just like, I just find it fascinating that he just writes like ridiculous tweets like all day, and like most of them get like zero, like like 2 likes or something, and then just like the 10th one will get like 100,000 likes or something, just like, and it's just him, it's just always just ridiculous stuff. And
I still need to figure out how to use Twitter or X. I don't even have it, kind of.
you don't have it. Okay.
Yeah, I made it from when I was in, I don't know, high school. I revived the account. I just don't understand how to use it. Are you supposed to just say things?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to see you just experiment now. Just see how you. I bet you'll get the hang of it.
I
Yeah,
don't want to say the wrong
this-
things, you know?
yeah. Maybe just bring your LinkedIn behavior to Twitter and just see what happens. I don't know.
To your point, I think the thought of just being out there gets a lot of people going, because a majority of folks play it too safe, right? And saying or posting just bland content is in itself by nature boring, right? So if you just go the outrageous route, then you have a very high success rate of potentially, or not higher success rate of getting traction than just being a vanilla data infrastructure company.
Yeah, it's just fun. I think it's just so fun. I think Revenue Cat, that this like mobile app subscription tool, they just like completely dominate that market. And I was speaking to the marketing guy Rick, and very cool guy, and he was saying they just like, their whole thing is like they want to help mobile developers, app developers make more money, and they want to have fun, and they'll do like anything that's like kind of marketing that kind of pushes either of those messages. And so they like, when they went to a conference recently, they like created like a human, like what they called like the grabber machines. So it's like you get strapped in a harness, and then you kind of like go and grab, like there's like a human claw kind of thing. And just
cool.
like ridiculous stuff. Yeah. It's love to see this stuff, and very few people do it.
So the next Snowflake conference, if we ever get a booth there, back in the day when we were still running with the toilet gag, I was like, we should literally just have a toilet stall in the booth, and there would be like a small flush and a big flush. If we ever get there, it's something that's still on the wall, and it would be like, oh, you run your SQL queries, like, well, like go to the small flush with a big flush, and how much money are you wasting, or how much water are you saving, right? It would be a cool gag. Well,
yeah, that'll be great. Yeah, you can send pictures of Arshem sitting on it as well. Fully in a decent way, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's the big flush, it shoots water up. You don't want to use that.
True. You win a prize or you get hit by water, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, this is awesome. Okay, so I'll hit you with one more question. Since you started, since we were hanging out in On Deck, shout out On Deck, by the way, great program. Everyone should say that. It's like it's really cool. What is there anything that you believe now, you kind of know now, or you would say to friends now that you wouldn't have thought back then about startups?
I would say that, or having a successful fundraise does not really describe how successful of a company or like a person you are, I would say. And I feel like back then, everyone's goal was to build some kind of prototype to raise money, and if they don't, then they're a failure. I would say fundraising is just how well you can tell a story. When we raised our first round of capital earlier this year, basically didn't have, like, we were in the same position as when I first met you in On Deck, except we just had a more compelling story, and someone believed us. And I would say if you're going out to fundraise, you have to talk to hundreds of investors, because it really is a numbers game. You have to find those 1 to 5 people who resonate with your story, because half of them aren't. All these investors, they don't really know better. They're just trying to believe and see and mitigate the risk of, like, hey, is this a person that I should invest money in, and like, can they solve problems? and like how you're able to articulate your answers to some of their questions, and then also paint a compelling story of your journey, why you're the person to do it, and how this company scales, is really just storytelling. So, yeah, if I were to tell myself back then, like, yeah, fundraising is really not all that it's jazzed up to be.
That's awesome. And where can people learn more about you and about Greybeam?
They can go to our landing page, greybeam.ai. That's spelled Grey. And it's beam, like light beam, not the food bean. My dad was like, "Why are you guys named after like food? You guys are doing data." And I'm like, "It's Greybeam."
Dad.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, yeah, you can find us on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out. We're always happy to chat. Whether you're in the data space or you're also just an early stage founder who needs someone else to bounce ideas off of, we're always happy to help. And that'll be it. I guess, yeah, I got to start my Twitter now, so you might be able to find me there at some point.
Hell yeah.
And I think that's it. Yeah, LinkedIn, website, Twitter.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kyle. And thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks, Jack.